the Glentendo podcast. I'm Glentendo. This is a weekly Nintendo / Smash community, big brain, galaxy brain, and also occasional peanut brain conversation podcast on all things Nintendo. The show goes up every Thursday for supporters on Patreon and becomes free to all the following Sunday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, and a bunch of other obscure podcasting sites that I have no idea what they are or how they work. Welcome to the show. I am the Glentendo Entertainment System, here to bring entertainment to your system, babe. 5 minutes in, you're already aroused. Less than 5 minutes, 5 seconds in, you're welcome, babe. So, this week, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. I'm flying solo, if you haven't noticed. No guests this week. I haven't done the solo one in a while, but that's not going to mean that it's any less entertaining. It's going to be even more entertaining. Now I just get to be as dumb as possible. I get to hog all the idiocy to myself. So I hope you enjoy. We're going to be talking about a lot of Nintendo news, 2 new games that were just announced for the Switch coming out next month. We're going to talk about these huge milestones that were announced this month from all the big companies in gaming. But first, we're going to talk about a little bit about Pokémon Snap, new Pokémon Snap. Not going to dive too deep into that because, man, I've had an insane week. Bro, you would not have survived the week that I survived this week. This was insane, man. I don't want to get into the details because a lot of classified information that I'm not at liberty to disclose. But, dude, this week was brutal. So I only got to play Pokemon Snap for like 2 hours. And the beginning of the game is very, very tutorial-y. So I know it's like that traditional Nintendo thing where they're like, they have to explain stuff to you, and I get it. Some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't, where I'm like, all right, bro, it's a camera. If I powered on my Nintendo Switch, pretty sure I could figure out how to use a camera. Okay. So some of the tutorial stuff is really dumb. And that's like just classic Nintendo stuff, like where, they kind of have this unique problem where they make games for literally everyone, which includes experts like me, but it unfortunately also includes people who maybe have never played a video game before in their life. And it can be a little annoying with that. But a lot of Nintendo games have that, and then they become very good as you go on. You just need to get over that hump where characters are explaining literally everything. Like, do you have eyeballs? Well, use your eyeballs to look at the screen. Do you have hands? Use the fingers on your hands to wrap around the controller and play this game. Like stuff like that. I'm like, all right, man. But anyway, I can say though, my early impressions, I'll definitely get more into Pokemon Snap next week, probably when I have a lot more time. I don't want to be too critical of it or have like a really strong opinion yet on the game when I haven't spent that much time with it. But I'm enjoying it. The only stuff is that tutorial stuff I didn't really like so far, but again, that's to be expected. But outside of that, it's pretty fun, man. Like just such a simple mechanic, and it's such a simple game, but it's very, very charming, and just taking the pictures is really fun. And even for a cold, lonely old man like myself, I found myself resisting the cuteness, but it becomes really hard to resist. Like there was a point where, you literally see like a Pichu and a Grookey snuggling asleep together. And even my cold heart was warmed a little by that. Like I have to admit. So this game is very charming. It's really cool. It looks great. And we'll talk about that a little bit more next week. As I'm playing it, one of the only things I could think of is like, so one of the as this game was coming out, like developers were basically saying like, oh, Namco Bandai developed this game, which obviously is different from HAL Laboratories, which made the original one on the N64. And we've talked about that on this show before about how like part of the reason why Pokemon Snap has not been around for so long is because, they don't develop. There's only so much these teams can do internally, so they had to find someone outside of Nintendo to make this game. And so they saw how good of a job Namco Bandai did with like the backgrounds and like the world building and the stages in Pokken Tournament. the Pokemon fighting game from the Wii U, which was then ported to the Switch. And they were like, "Hey, you guys did such a good job with that. Like that lend all those things lend themselves to Pokemon Snap." So as I'm playing this game, I've been thinking about it, and I'm like, wow, they're doing such a good job with Pokemon Snap in terms of like how nice it looks and stuff that maybe they'll just be like, fine, just make a console, Pokemon game that everybody's been asking for that looks amazing. Obviously, that's like a false comparison. I see, like, I'm just thinking that as I'm playing the game, but when you really think about that, you're like, all right, this is really a very simple game, and it does not mean that this team would be capable of doing something as mega huge as a Pokemon mainline game that looks as good as Pokemon Snap. But a guy can dream. All right. So hopefully that'll happen. And then it also just reminds me that, man, um, a lot of you guys know I've been playing Pokemon. I started Pokemon Shield months ago. I have not touched that game in like over a month, dude. I forgot that I was even going through it. Like, I don't know, man. Like I kind of hit my stride with that game, and then it went right back into being very, very linear, very simple, very easy. A lot of text to mash through that I don't care about. A lot of characters that I don't care about. And again, it's just one of those games where I'm like, this is a great game if you've never played a video game before. But if you've played Pokemon before, I'm not sure that I'm enjoying the mainline story in Pokemon Shield. But I don't know. Maybe I'll get back to that at some point. I have no clue. Pokemon Snap, enjoying it. It's a cool passive game. I feel like if you want a relaxing game, definitely check it out. That's as much as I could say right now at the very early stages. I hope nobody was waiting eagerly for this episode, thinking it was going to be like a 2 hour, like epic new Pokemon Snap episode. Because man, I just haven't had the time, honestly. And honestly, I don't even know that many people have the game. Like I've seen a lot of people on Twitter. It seems to be a pretty good game for people streaming on Twitch. So I've seen a few people doing that, and I've seen people posting some pictures here and there on social media, but I don't know a lot of people who bought this game, and there seems to be this thing where a lot of people are like very hesitant to buy this game at full price like this, and they're not sure how much content is in it. And the first Pokemon Snap is also a really short, small game. So I kind of get it. They kind of want to make sure that $60 is worth it. Um, but also you got to remember, man, $60 for a game now, the Pokemon Snap when it came out on the N64, it was like $65 or $70. Like games were way more expensive back then, and you could argue that games are more expensive to make now. So in a way, they're kind of charging you less than they would have charged you way back then. They're spending more money to make it, and you're paying less than you would have paid for that fat Nintendo cartridge on your N64. But yeah, if you guys have any thoughts on new Pokemon Snap, let me know. I'm like talking about it on Twitter here and there and seeing what people think about it. And outside of that, bro, I've been playing a lot of Mario Party. I'm surprised at how much I've been playing new Super Mario Party since they added this online mode. It's been really fun, man. And I just gotta say, this is definitely, I think at this point I can say confidently that despite the one major flaw this game has, this is my favorite Mario Party ever. Like, I really like 2, but when I went back to 2, I was like, man, 2 is not as good as I remember it. And there's a few things I still really like about 2, but it's really hard to go back and replay 2. And all the other ones after that, I haven't really fallen in love with. I think 3 was probably the best one overall. Like that one you could go back to, and it actually was still very good. Um, but yeah, I never fell in love with any of the other ones outside of 2 and 3. And this one, I just really like this one. And this one, it's like, it looks so good. I think all the mini games are so fun. I love the Joy-Con usage. Like, it doesn't feel gimmicky. It feels like it's actually better for this style of game. And it makes everything simple enough and fun enough. And then it just looks great. I love the ally system where you could just land on a little ally spot, and then whatever playable characters are not in the game, like obviously you have 4 players and everybody picks a character, and whichever characters weren't chosen, you can get as a buddy that'll just help you roll your dice. He'll add one or two to your dice roll, and you can use that character's special dice. Like ideas like that are really new and really cool, and I feel like they're really creative. So I don't know, man. The mini games are so good, and man, that mini game where you're freaking flipping the state cube, it looks, dude, it looks like PS7 graphics, bro. It looks like new. It looks amazing. I can't believe how good that mini game looks, man. And I just get so good at flipping the freaking cube with the Joy-Con. I love that stuff. So yeah, the boards are small and there's only four of them. And one of them is like really lame. That freaking tropical one where you just get stuck on the pineapple for the entire game. Dude, that shit sucks. But I still think overall, this is my favorite one. I want to play it right now. But there's one thing about this game that I refuse to do. I will never play this game with DK or Bowser playable, bro. Like if one of the people that we're playing with is playing as DK or Bowser, dude, we're anytime I play the game, those two characters are banned, blocked, never to be seen again, bro. Dude, those characters are broken. So those characters are actually like unlockable characters, right? And you're probably asking, like, if you haven't played Mario Party or you haven't played a lot of this Mario Party, you're like, I don't get it. What's so special about DK and Bowser that makes them broken? Dude, so in this game, everyone rolls a dice, just like any other normal Mario Party, right? But in this Mario Party, they added that every character has their own unique dice that they also roll. And DK and Bowser's unique character specific dice is insane. At face value, you're probably going to be like, oh, that doesn't look too crazy. Like DK's, I think is like he like has three zeros and then he has like three tens. Don't quote me on that. It's obvious. It might be like one or two. It's a little bit different, but that's the general idea. And Bowser's is very similar, where these characters either go nowhere or they go 10 spots. They go wherever they want. And because you can choose to use a normal dice or use that dice, like sometimes these characters just get to like really cut the line and go wherever they want. And I swear to you, I've been playing this game a lot since the update. Every single time that DK or Bowser is playing in the game, that someone that we're playing with is using those one of those two characters, they always win. They always win. Dude, it's like impossible to lose with those characters. It is so annoying. So yeah, I ban them. They're blocked. If you want to play Mario Party with me, you cannot use them. The only thing that sucks is that then when you land on that ally spot that I mentioned earlier, you can get DK or Bowser as your ally, and that means that even if you're playing as like Luigi or Peach or another character, you get to use their broken little dice if you get them as an ally. So I can't ban that. That's a little harder to control. But man, I'm not playing with anybody who's using DK or Bowser. Which reminds me. So Marina, she talks on the show a lot. She always sends in contributions. I don't get why we haven't played this game together. Like Marina and I talk about games all the time. We talk about all sorts of stuff. But then I realized we never actually play games together. Like I can't even remember the last time we actually played any games together. The last time we played was like, oh, she needed to use me to evolve her Pokemon. So she was like, oh, can you like just send this back after it evolves? So just, hop online and we trade back and forth. This is wrong. And we're going to fix this with this Mario Party thing. All right. So hit me up. We're playing Mario Party. You're not allowed to use DK or Bowser. That's happening. I always have a bunch of friends who want to play this game. It's going to be super, super fun. Slip and slide into the DMs. All right? Mario Party. We're doing it. All right. So, we talked about Mario Party. That's what I'm playing. That's what a lot of people are playing. We talked about new Pokemon Snap a little bit. Going to do that more later. Mr. Nair, Mr. underscore Nair SSB on Twitter. Frequent. He's a supporter and a frequent listener. Always has really good questions for the show. And he wants to hear. I wish Hungry was here for this question, but we don't need him because I already know what he's going to say because I've had this conversation with him a million times already. But he wants to know, and he wants to hear my thoughts on comparing the original Super Mario 64 to Super Mario 64 DS, the remake that came out at the launch of the DS. I've had this conversation with Hungry a million times, and I can tell you that overall, I'm sure there's a lot of things he appreciates about that remake, but overall, he thinks it's trash. And I actually really like that remake in terms of like when I got it on the DS, I played the crap out of that, dude. And not only did I play the crap out of it, dude, I was so excited about when the DS came out. That was like when Nintendo got really experimental with their hardware, and it was like a really big deal. Like touchscreens were not on phones yet, so a touchscreen gaming device was unheard of. So I was really excited for all the new stuff. And so when they put out Mario 64 on the DS, they had this way you could either play the game normally with just the buttons on the system, or you can use your right hand to hold the stylus and use the stylus on the touchscreen as a joystick to move Mario. And then with your left hand, you're holding your DS, but you're using your thumb to use the D-pad to jump. So it's really a weird setup because it's like you basically switching the functions to your opposite hand. So usually you move a character with your left hand and then jump and use all the buttons with your right hand. With this, your right hand is the stylus and the joystick, and your left hand is the one that you're jumping with. And so I actually played the entire game like that. And even now, looking back, I'm like, man, was I crazy? Like, how did my hands not fall off, dude? Like it's just funny to play the game like that. If you still have that game, try that control scheme because that's how I played the game. I did not play that game with a D-pad or, the normal setup. And part of the reason for that is part of the reason that Hungry thinks that this remake is trash. And I kind of agree with him too, is that part of the reason I adopted that control method is because playing a 3D Mario game with a D-pad to move him is like heresy, dude. Like, dude, the whole point of Mario 64 was that they were like, you have to remember that when Mario 64 came out, every single Mario game, and not just Mario game, pretty much every game ever before that game was what used a D-pad to move. And you had to sell people on this idea of like a joystick for your movement. And so Mario 64 is like that was the whole thing. Like Miyamoto spent months mapping the controls and like fine tuning the movement and adding all these cool intricate things that you could do with the joystick so that they can prove to you that this was a better way of moving in a 3D environment than a D-pad. And keep in mind the N64 had a D-pad. It had a really big nice D-pad, but they were like, we need to make people, you cannot use that for Mario. Like you have no choice. You have to use the joystick. So fast forward to the DS, they're forcing me to play this revolutionary game that revolutionized 3D movement with a D-pad, and not just any D-pad. The base DS, like not the DS Lite, the normal DS, the one that I had, the big fat blue one, dude, that D-pad was garbo, man. It had like these little like indents in it where like it would give you blisters on your fingers and stuff. It was like really, really weird. It was a strange D-pad. So, so yeah, I played the whole game with that touchscreen thing, and I really think that just on a concept level, that remake is almost like heresy for first of all making us play it with a D-pad or the touchscreen, no joystick. And then they also changed the game. Like they added other characters and like you can't play the base like normal vanilla Mario 64. It really added a bunch of stuff to it that was really different. Um, but outside of that, like overall, that is a great, great game. Like I really enjoyed it. I 100%ed it, got every star. I was excited to play as Wario and do like the new stuff. As someone who, played a million hours of the original, it was cool to have like a new version of it. Looking back now, I would never recommend that version over the original to anybody. But as it is a really great game if you never I think it's a great game if you had played the original and you just wanted kind of like a new version of it. But it's definitely not a great remake in terms of like replacing the old one and making it like oh, you just get this a new one and you just forget about the old one. It's just a different experience at the end of the day. Um, but you know what the thing is? I think the best part about that game is actually the multiplayer mini games that came with it on the side. Like they had all these touchscreen mini games, and I think more people enjoyed that than they actually enjoyed the base game. The base game is solid. It's good, but it's not like incredible or amazing. Um, those mini games were really really fun, and I remember most people, you could play those mini games without everyone owning a DS. Like it had the download play feature where only one person needed the game. Dude, that stuff was awesome, and they were just fun little cute mini games. Like the meme still lives of Yoshi on the he's like on the bridge of the castle, and he's just pulling out the flowers. You had to like pull out the flowers on the DS, and the petals, like one petal at a time, and it was like she loves me not, she loves me, she loves me not, and it's just like wow, that was kind of depressing and funny. Um, so overall, as a game, of course, it's a first party Nintendo game. It's a great game in terms of like the overall package, but in terms of it being a remake of Mario 64, it's not a good remake. It's a great game that's not a good remake. It's like it's just another experience. You know what I mean? So, Mr. Nair, I hope that answers your question. I hope you keep coming back with these really good questions. So, this week, we got two games randomly announced by Nintendo on Twitter for June, which is just hilarious, man. Like, this is how they do stuff now. Like we all wait for directs, but I again, we don't. I don't know if this is like their new thing or if this is just because of COVID making things really hard for them to plan and structure and put into a direct. But we got two random announcements. One of them is a port of a game that came out last year. The remakes of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 coming to Switch June 25th. And this is a little bit of a weird scenario because even if you go on Nintendo's website, they have like the game and like they have a little page for the game. But as far as I've seen, I did a little research on this. There isn't a single screenshot of the Switch specific version of this game. So I'm like a little worried, like, with all Switch ports of PS4 and Xbox One games, you always gotta like see if it's gonna look good on Switch and how it's gonna run and stuff. And so far we have no idea. But I'm hoping that this really works out because these two games are freaking awesome, dude. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, I played the crap out of 1 and 2 on the PS1, and then that was the first game I ever bought. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 was the first game I ever bought on the GameCube at launch. Okay, I saw Pikmin and I saw Luigi's Mansion, and I was like, I don't know what those games are. And I bought Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 until Smash Melee came out. So I love that series. That series is really great. Don't judge it by its cover and just think like, oh, it's a skateboard game, like it's some third party trash. Like these games are actually they're really really great, and the reviews for this remake that came out last year were through the roof. So I'm definitely gonna check this out, and I prefer to buy my games on Switch. Hopefully, this actually looks good on Switch. I just don't like playing anything on my PS4, man. Like anything, I just don't like the controller. And I take my Switch with me everywhere I go. And like you can call me a fanboy all you want. There are people out there who can't fathom ever buying a game on the Switch that exists on other consoles. But dude, like I'm actually really enjoying Apex Legends on the Switch specifically right now because the controls are actually better. The gyro controls are better. And the game runs smooth enough now with one of the recent updates where a big, huge, like modern game like Apex Legends, dude, I'm going to say it. It runs well on Switch and it looks good on Switch. Is it the best? No, but it runs good and it runs well and it looks good. And I would say that out of all the console versions, like not including PC, dude, the controls are just better. The Pro controller plus having the gyro makes aiming really fun and really good. So Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, June 25th. I'm gonna keep an eye out on that. So if like I'll let you know. Because like I'm gonna be on this one. Like I got into skateboarding in real life because of playing Tony Hawk games. I skated for like over 10 years in real life. If any of you guys want me to kick your ass and skate, let me know. All right. I could do like every trick and then I could do it all switch and fakie and nollie and all that. So come at me if you want the smoke on a skateboard, bro. So yeah, I'll let you know about that game. But the other game, very interesting, Game Builder Garage. And that comes out June 11th. It's a $30 smaller title, but this is straight from Nintendo. And this is how they're branding it. They're saying it's programming made fun. Have you ever dreamed of building your own video game? The Game Builder Garage software is a great place to start. Anyone can learn the basics of game design and visual programming with step-by-step lessons created by the minds of Nintendo. Are you a baby Miyamoto? Do you dream of being an adult, fully grown, fully evolved Miyamoto? This game is for you. So yeah, this is a cool looking game. This is weird because I feel like everyone is making these game builder games now. Like famously, Sony had Dreams that came out last year or the year before, and it's like a big, huge mess of like a story behind that game. It hasn't sold well, and it took like 10 plus years to make, but it's really it's a really great tool because it has a lot of like you could do a lot in dreams in terms of detail and like really going into like making very interesting deep games. And usually game builders are very simple, and this one looks more simple. This one seems not like dreams, dreams is like insane, but when you look at the videos of the stuff that you can build with this and what you can program and like some of the functions that you could do, you can make like pretty interesting and intricate 3D games. I saw like a video where it looked like almost like a Breath of the Wild shrine where they had some actual like action adventure stuff that they built. So this comes out in a month and just another surprise announcement comes out of nowhere. This game looks really cool. Um, I think this game is going to be one of the problems I'm already seeing ahead of time though is like one of the problems Mario Maker had, where the ability to share what you made was very limited. As with a lot of things in Nintendo, the online element of it is always like they're trying to thread this needle between like letting people, you know, do things safely and not having it just be this mess where you have too much stuff and too much sharing and too many levels. We'll have to see how they deal with that because if it's really limited and people feel like they can't share what they made easily, it defeats the whole purpose of the game. You know what I mean? Like these games are going to live if the people feel like it's easy to like see what somebody else made and then play it. And they have to figure that out. Like I remember Mario Maker had like a messy system where it was kind of hard to find the good levels and like you just had a lot of like mess everywhere, and they kind of fixed it a little bit with Mario Maker 2 on the Switch, but it wasn't really 100% there. So yeah, it's really cool that they're making something like this, and obviously I'm not sure how I'm gonna play this though. I'm not a big like I've never really been big on like the make your own thing games myself personally. Like I always admire them a lot, like Mario Maker, I never really got super into that. I don't know why. Like maybe it's because it feels like you have to put a lot of work in before you could really enjoy it. Like usually when you're playing a game, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna unwind and just get lost in this game. But with that, it's like you actually have to like really build something, and then it becomes fun later when you built something, did all the hard work, and then you could play through it or give it to somebody else. So I don't know if this game is for someone like me personally, but it definitely looks really cool. And if I had to try one of these like game builder type games that seems so popular now, of course I would go with like the first party Nintendo one, like the game maker that makes the best games. I would want their game builder. So yeah, two random games announced on Twitter this past week, and yeah, that's that. Finally, our final little topic here. Final thing to discuss is that this week Nintendo announced that their past year was the most profitable year for the company ever. So this is like 100 plus year old company, and they made more money in the last year than any other year of the company's existence. The Switch is obviously doing insanely well. It had the biggest year ever for the console, and it's now at over 84 million units sold, which is like past the Game Boy Advance, past obviously past the Wii U, past a bunch of other consoles. And after only 49 months on the market, which is faster, it reached that milestone of over 84 million faster than the PS4 and the Wii, which were the record holders before the Switch came along. So this is really great, and obviously like the pandemic had a lot to do with that. Animal Crossing last year and the pandemic really boosted things a lot, but it means there's a lot of things about this. There's like a lot of meaning in this one huge sales milestone. um the first thing that's really interesting is also just like everyone seems to be doing really well, which is like very interesting. So for example, back when the PS2 was breaking all these records, Nintendo and Xbox were not doing super great. Like Xbox was doing well because it was the newcomer and that was the first system they had. But overall, they only sold like 30 million Xboxes. And like compared to PS2 selling 150 million, that's not a lot. And then obviously the GameCube was the biggest failure Nintendo had up until that point. Like in terms of home consoles, that was their lowest selling console. It was still profitable, but like it sold less than the N64, and the N64 sold less than the Super Nintendo, and they were just on this downward trajectory. And Sony was just like breaking every possible records that Nintendo had never even broken before. Um, so the fact that the PS5 is doing so well. Like right now, they had a bunch of milestones that Sony just announced where the PS5 is the fastest selling game system ever in like the first 5 months or whatever it was. And so the Switch is breaking records and the PlayStation's breaking records and PlayStation's making all this money. And it's not this situation where, everyone is doing poorly and one guy is winning. It's like they're all doing well in their own little pockets and they're all kind of doing something different now, whereas Nintendo's now the only handheld option, and even it's like a hybrid handheld thing, and Sony's like just doubling down on that traditional like home console. You plug it into a wall, it's a giant box. And then Microsoft is doing really well with Game Pass, and like offering like a Netflix style gaming thing. They're not even telling us how many systems they've sold. They're just telling you how many subscribers they have to Game Pass. So really cool that everyone is doing so well, and like video games are just so popular that everyone has room to do really, really well. And the other thing that's really interesting about this is that now the Switch is on pace to maybe become not just Nintendo's best-selling home console ever, but become the best-selling console maybe of all time. So the best-selling home console for Nintendo is the Wii at like 101 million units, and the Switch is already at 84. It's guaranteed to blow past that sometime soon, and that's really interesting and important because the the Wii by this time in its life cycle was doing really well, but it was starting to go downhill. Like people were starting to lose interest, and like the fact that it was not an HD system was starting to like, it was getting less and less third party support, and the PS3 and 360 were starting to like really, really like cut ahead of the Wii in terms of interest and the games and the conversation about games. The Wii was starting to become like a little bit of a fad at this point in its life cycle, whereas the Switch is just getting bigger and it feels like it's just as relevant, and the games are still really, really good looking. And Mario Kart 8 is selling so well even though it's like a 10-year-old game and it looks like a modern game. So the Switch and the Wii are just, it's like two different success stories and it's not at all similar. And the way that these numbers are stacking up, I really hope the Switch would have to double what it sold. Recently, Nintendo's president said that they look at the Switch as being right now in the halfway point of its life cycle. And if that's true, they would need to sell another 80 million to become the king, to become the Don, to just be the number one game system ever, which I really hope that they do. Because if I've said this on the show before, but this is going to sound like some super fanboy shit. But like, I hate the fact, even though I own one and I really enjoy this console, I hate that the PS2 is the number one game system of all time because so many people, like millions upon millions upon millions of people, bought that system because it was a freaking DVD player. And I hate that it's number one and that Sony has a trophy, has that ultimate trophy by like making that device like that. Whereas the second place guy is really close behind is the DS. Dude, the DS only plays games. You can literally not do anything but play games on the DS, and it almost has that number one spot. So I just hope the Switch takes the PS2 off that throne, man. I can't stand that that thing is number one, man. That DVD player as number one is not fair. That's like saying that the iPhone is the best selling game system ever because it kind of plays games. Like, dude, you know how many people play games on their phone? A lot less than the people who just own a phone because you need a phone. And like maybe that's not a perfect analogy, but man, I can't tell you how many people I knew who had everyone I knew had a PS2 and they all had like one game and then like a million DVDs. I can't stand that thing, dude. So the Switch, I need you to do this. I need the Switch Pro to come along and just like extend the life cycle to the point where Nintendo wins this category, bro. Dude, this system doesn't even have Netflix. Like the Switch has the only thing it has that's like not really gaming is the YouTube channel, and that's it. And like nobody uses that. Dude, it doesn't even have Netflix. So if a system that doesn't have Netflix becomes number one, I'm gonna pop off, bro. Riz, eat your heart out, bro. The PS2 is a false prophet. Suck it, bro. I'm gonna look like such an idiot if like the freaking Switch just somehow falls off a cliff and like does not even become close to breaking this thing. I mean, at this point, it's on the trajectory to beat the PS2. Like at this same point in the PS2's life cycle, at 4 years in, it was not selling as the Switch is beating it if you're comparing them one to one. But you never know. Like there's more competition now. Like I said, everyone is doing really well, so it's not really the same thing. And like who knows what's gonna happen? The PS2 sold for like 15 years. That console had such a long lifespan. So we'll see what happens, but please, I need Riz to shake my hand. When that console is dethroned to the Switch, Riz is going to shake my hand. I'm going to take a picture of it. It's going to be like one of those moments where someone wins a contest and they have the picture of them like getting a giant check. I'm going to get my giant fanboy like check from Riz. Congrats. Shake my hand. Take the photo. I'm framing it. I'm wearing it around my neck every time I go to your house. So yeah, and the reason that any of this stuff is interesting to me is like obviously like people every gaming podcast and website is talking about sales and numbers like it- honestly some of this stuff doesn't even matter like outside of the fanboy stuff that I just indulged in, like who really cares? Like I said, every company is doing really really well to some degree. Even Microsoft, who like so, like, quick aside, Apple and Epic are in a lawsuit right now. The trial is happening this week, right? And all this like weird stuff was leaked because it was somehow relevant to the trial. So there's all this like insider knowledge that is kind of become public because it's somehow useful to them in the trial. One of the funny things was like apparently someone at Microsoft went on record saying Microsoft has never made a single profit off of a single Xbox that they ever sold. So that console is so expensive to manufacture from the very beginning. You're talking about from 2001 to now, they've sold every Xbox at a loss. Like that's insane. Okay. Sony sells at a loss kind of, but they have like this situation where their royalties that they get off of selling software makes up for their hardware loss. So they can like spend money to build a PS4 and sell it to you for cheaper than what they paid to make it, but then they kind of make their money back by selling you games. Um, Microsoft has never done that apparently, or they've spent so much making those consoles that it just they never broke even after selling the games. And I know that Nintendo has always sold every game system at a profit except for the Wii U. So every Nintendo system that they've ever put out, they always made it with less money than they sold it to you for, which is crazy because most of those systems at launch have been like $200 maximum. So, so yeah, we find out everyone's doing well. and the Switch is doing well. Nintendo is doing unbelievably well in terms of software. Like, dude, Nintendo is the king of, maybe Sony always beats them in terms of like they sell more game systems, but in terms of software, like games, the thing that we're here for, the thing that actually matters the most, Nintendo is still the king overall. Like they sell more, their first party games outsell everybody. They are reviewed better. They're the games that people are the most excited about 20 years later and want them to come back. They're still the pioneers of a lot of new genres, and like they invent stuff. Like they just make new genres all the time, and they make new IP. And you know, Breath of the Wild is like the best open world game of all time. Like they're just unbeatable when it comes to like first party games and characters and like all that stuff. And the thing that is really interesting about all this is I'm reading the Ask Iwata book. So for those who don't know, even though you're listening to the show, I assume you know, but any just in case we have any newbies, Satoru Iwata was the previous president of Nintendo before the president that we have now, and he passed away in 2015 or 2016, somewhere around there. And he had led Nintendo like from 2003 or 2004 up until he passed away. And he's legendary. He was a legendary programmer before he became the president of Nintendo. And he led the company from like, losing consistently to PlayStation over and over again to the two biggest successes that the company ever had. So the Wii became he was the first home console that Iwata uh, as president that Nintendo put out with Iwata as president was the Wii. It became their biggest home console ever at the time, and the DS became their biggest game system ever. Period. Um, and then he also, oversaw the 3DS, which started out really bad, but it eventually became a really successful and amazing system. And then obviously the Wii U, which is their worst selling home console ever. So this guy, he was 3 for 4, three successes, two of them like incredible successes, and one of them just a regular success, and then one really big unprecedented failure. So as I'm reading this book, right, I'm like, you're going through all these quotes, and he's telling you about how he manages and how like his thoughts on Miyamoto and his thoughts on Sakurai and his thoughts on the Itoi, the guy who created Earthbound, and he's talking about how like he used to manage stuff and do approach managing at HAL Laboratories, and then he became the president of Nintendo, and it's a really cool book, and the guy was like a really genuine great guy and a really smart dude. This guy was like a genius, bro. Some of the stuff that he pulled off as a programmer is just unreal. He also co-created Smash Brothers with Sakurai, which is he goes into that a little bit, which is just amazing. So this guy's a legend. He's unbelievable. And I bring this up because as I'm reading all these articles about how successful Nintendo is right now, it's really sad that he passed away right after the Wii U, because it's almost like the Wii U is what people remember him for, and it's like he took Nintendo to such a high place, but then it left on such a low note. And to see where Nintendo is now and where the Switch is now, it's not just that it would be nice for him to have been around for it. Dude, this guy laid the groundwork for it. Like he's the reason the Switch exists. He passed away before it launched, but it was already being made, and he was already, Sakurai famously says like he looks at Super Smash Brothers Ultimate as like a final mission that Iwata had asked him to do. Like dude, these guys are very, some of these guys come off as like these very like cold, sometimes Japanese dudes, but man, like sometimes when they describe this stuff, it's like this epic, deeply emotional stuff. Like Sakurai said in an interview, he's like, him and Iwata were super close, and obviously they created the biggest fighting game franchise of all time together, and like they did so much work together with Kirby and all that stuff. And he's like, yeah, it's like his final mission to me was to make this game for the Switch. Like a lot of people might just look at it as like another game, but he's like, no, this is like an epic like life mission for me to make Smash Ultimate, make the biggest and the best Smash game ever, and put it on the Switch. And just to see that all of the work that he did paid off, but years later, And now we're looking at maybe the Switch being the biggest game system ever created, and everyone loves it. It's like the best thing ever. It's definitely my favorite Nintendo system, and it's only 4 years old. And looking at like Breath of the Wild and like how, like, dude, this guy Iwata really brought Nintendo back and forth and then back again in such a huge way. And it's awesome to read the book, but man, it's sad just to see that he did not get to live to see all that work pay off the way that it's paying off right now, man. Unbelievable record shattering stuff. And I assume that for the next couple years, gaming is becoming so much bigger. Nintendo is becoming so much bigger. We're just going to keep hearing about, it feels like every week there's always like some new record being broken. And part of that is just marketing. It's like these marketing guys want everyone to think that everything is like always breaking records. So they always find some way of like phrasing it. Well, if, this is breaking this record and technically for the 8th month of the 9th year or whatever, like they always find some like criteria that makes it look like they're doing something unbelievable. But this is really unbelievable, man. 100 plus years of this country, Nintendo land. No, 100 plus years of this company. And they just had their biggest year ever. And man, getting those Wii U flashbacks where people were like, dude, this company is losing money, and where's Nintendo going to be? And they should go like Sega and all this crap. And like, dude, that stuff is dead. So Satoru Iwata, rest in peace, obviously. I'm really enjoying this book. And dude, this guy would be proud. And these dudes at Nintendo are still making the best games of all time. And now they're making the best system of all time. So Viva Nintendo, now and forever. Riz, you're going to shake my hand when that PS2 loses. All right, buddy? And with that, that's the end of this week's show. Thank you guys for listening. Next week, I don't even know what we're going to talk about. Nintendo might just go on Twitter and just announce a bunch of random stuff. But check out the Ask Iwata book. It's available digitally everywhere if you don't want to go to a store and actually find the book. But it's really interesting, especially if you find this show interesting. That book has a lot of details in it that maybe most people would find too like inside baseball to give a crap about. But for people like us, it's pretty awesome. So yeah. And Marina, play Mario Party with me. Why are you ducking me? Like every time I ask you to play a game, you're just like, I have other things to do. But yeah, guys, I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you for joining. See you next week. Thank you guys. See you next week. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. You can follow me on Twitter at Super Glentendo. The Glentendo podcast is a weekly Nintendo / Smash community podcast. Our aim is to have galaxy brain conversations on all things Nintendo. If you like the show, please consider becoming a friendo and supporting on patreon.com/Glentendo. Friendos get early access to the show each Thursday. The show then becomes free to all the following Sunday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts right now and you actually like the show, please give us a good review. It helps boost our visibility so more people can find the show. This show is brought to you by our amazing producers, Naomi Eduardo, In a Yellow Flash, and the legendary Riz.